So I'm curious. I want to hear your theories because I don't know what's going on. Why are there fireworks going off like crazy all over the place? Is this actually happening in your neighborhood, Jason?
Not in mine. And I'm back in the DC metro area. I was in Charlotte and Atlanta for a week and a half where COVID doesn't exist. So I haven't seen a lot of fireworks. Mind you, this weekend, we got 4th of July in DC. Maybe they're going to hold them in a city. I don't know. But I haven't seen random fireworks. And I've been hearing these stories. I see people on Facebook and Twitter with these blurry photos of like, why are people shooting fireworks in my backyard? And it's crazy. And it's driving my cat nuts. I don't know where this is coming from because this is
are you seeing
not
it?
my suburb.
I live in suburbia, dude. I live in Connecticut. So I'm in another world anyway. And this is pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic, I was isolated. So I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
I hear it I'm in Brooklyn. I hear it every night. I see it every night. It's definitely people shooting off 6 p.m., 9 p.m., 12 a.m., whatever. I hear the police psychological op.
I've heard that theory.
I hear it. It could be. I'm not sure. I don't know.
I don't know what that would be about. And here's the thing. Like, now you want to talk about
disturbing the protesters, disturbing people who are unhappy with the way things are going, and thus they're protesting. And so if you can't sleep, then you can't get up and go protest, or at least not with the same energy or something.
That is a very elaborate scheme that I would put way beyond the comprehension and strategic planning of your average police department. But I will say this, because I saw this, a couple of weeks ago out protesting and everything else like that. I do know that, say, the cops were putting bricks out there. I know that was done. We saw that.
That's real?
Huh? Oh, that's very real. That's very real. We saw that in downtown Baltimore. I remember I have it on video. We're walking by. I was actually in my car. Protesters were walking by, and the moment because the bricks would be sitting there like a floating axe in a video game, like bling, 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 bling. You want to grab this? You want to grab this? You want to grab this? It'd just be this pile of bricks. And people were literally backing away, and they're like, look, there's no construction on the street in Baltimore, no sidewalks being redone. And suddenly there's this magic palette of bricks. Right. And then you had the video of the white woman driving by handing out bricks to protesters. Like the brick thing, I do believe that was the police. I do believe that was agent provocateurs, trying to set people up. But the fireworks, that's new to me. No one out here is shooting fireworks.
Some people have said that they're doing it like if you're shooting off all kind of fireworks, then people will call and then we'll be able to come in and do whatever we want. I don't know. I keep hearing these theories. The people who like the theories are like, you're an idiot for not believing this. And I'm like, I don't believe it. It doesn't land on me.
It doesn't. It doesn't. And here's the thing. Like, there's so many, like, I'm sorry. This is my thing with that. Like I said, bricks, real. Fireworks. Since when did the police need fireworks as an excuse to come in and crack skulls?
Right.
Like, that's the part that gets me. Like, they pick and choose who they want to harass, who they want to beat on anyway, right? Remember, white people walking around with guns saying, you're destroying my right to get bad haircuts. The cops didn't want to do anything to them, but suddenly they're out like the Watchmen, trying to knock the crap out of people who are, taking a knee and being polite. So
and how long has this been going on? Huh? How long has this firework phenomenon been going on?
About 2 weeks.
Like about 2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah,
all right.
About 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah,
now that you mention it, these random pops in Farmington, Connecticut.
I can hear fireworks going off right now. No joke.
Wow.
We know this much. There ain't no motherfucking cause for celebration. None whatsoever.
Thank you.
So that ain't what it is. So that the theory must have something. Maybe it's not the right source, but we know that it is not in celebration. We know that much.
I am not in a mood to celebrate when we've been protesting in New York for a month solid. People are still marching all the time. We're occupying City Hall like crazy. They just redid the budget and they cut $500 million out of NYPD's $6 billion budget. And they claimed it was $1 billion cut, but $500 million is some budget trickery. So you really only cut $500 million, which the NYPD probably won't even notice.
No.
So all the fighting we did,
probably should have done that anyway.
Exactly.
Nothing.
And where's it going? Where's the $500 million going?
I don't know. I don't even know. know. So
that's the thing. They cut it out of their budget, and then where they're redirecting it to is the $500 million question. Where they
So there's definitely nothing to celebrate in terms of, I mean, especially in like super progressive New York City. I would have thought that we could get a victory here, but
that is a victory.
Nothing.
The budget had $500 million more dollars before you were protesting. So that is progress. Is it substantially going to change everybody's lives? Well,
it's not progress. It's a political
pacifier.
Yes, a pacifier. That's
political
like
pacifier.
We gave you
only if you're satisfied, though.
When we give the baby a pacifier, it doesn't actually eat. It just has the sensation of sucking, which calms it down. But it doesn't actually eat. It's hungry, but it doesn't actually get to eat. We're not getting an actual change. It's not actual progress. It's just
belly full, but we're hungry. Right?
Come on, Bob. Come on.
My thing is though, like it's only a pacifier if you're pacified, but it is still a change, right? That's my thing. Like they did something, and now you're in a position because they weren't doing anything before. Now you're in a position to say, this something you gave me is not enough. But the fact that you gave me this something says to me that you realize the legitimacy, or at least you fear the potency of my protest. So, hey, I am certainly not a glass half full kind of person, but, just like they did in LA, where it's 5% and there's 50 million cops in LA, if you would say in June of 2019, 2018, 2017, there's not a politician in America, even a Democratic mayor, who would touch the police budget. And certainly not for something that remotely had to do with police brutality and Black folks.
Yeah.
So that's it ain't enough, right?
Yeah.
But that is a move in the right direction. Because again, like you said, the real fight is going to be, how's this money distributed? Where is it going to go? Does it end up going into the policeman's benevolent fund or something else like that? Because the other tricky thing with all this stuff with defunding is like, it's also the police contracts. Is it locked into the city budget in some shape or form? These police insurance policies, like it's just the beginning. But I would say that's a legitimate crack. I would say it's
no, you're right. And listen, I mean, ultimately, what is enough? And I mean that in terms of like, I don't know if you could put a price tag on, the reciprocity owed, for centuries of injustice at the hands of the police department. So it's like there's disbanding and defunding, and then there is nothing somewhere on that spectrum. That 500 million lives somewhere on that spectrum, but I don't know.
It's like a millimeter away from nothing. It's like it's not like anywhere near in the middle. It's just like we gave them a pebble.
But again, to Jason's point, it's moving, and maybe it's only so far, but from nothing. The goal is to keep pushing it over here, and it's just hopefully that's just the start, right?
I don't think it's pushing. I think it's like we gave you.
No, it's our job to push it. And I'm saying, no. We're going to continue pushing it. Yeah.
Calm you down. Hopefully, you'll go home.
Clearly, y'all ain't calm. Clearly, you ain't calm, Toure. Look, it doesn't work. It hasn't worked. You ain't satisfied.
Saturday,
about Black Lives Mattering and like, what does it mean to matter?
Right,
like,
it matter.
It matters.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Malcolm X. Now I'm not satisfied.
I know. So I wonder if you saw this thing I've been wondering about. I'm not even sure how I fully feel about it. You see the baby's video that premiered on the BET Awards where
I missed it, but I heard about it. But he had
he's on the ground, like George Floyd, rhyming with a cop's knee on his neck.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, is this like, we are all George Floyd and we feel you and we never forget, even though it's BET, we don't need to be reminded. We don't forget that. There's no level of awareness in a BET context that we need to be reminded of that.
Right.
Or is it like everything is political and even the non-political artists are politicized? Or is it like an artist who's typically not politicized making a statement, which is ultimately like, look at me. Like, is it crass? Or is it like,
how did it make you feel? How did it make you feel? Did it make you uncomfortable?
It did make me.
Because again, I didn't see it. I'm always talking about the idea.
I felt like I needed more context. I didn't know how to feel about it. I wasn't sure. Like, is this okay? Like, I remember I'm asking people, like, is this okay? I mean, like, yeah, he has the right to inject himself in the conversation, even if he's never been political. Right? You don't have to. Now, if Chuck D did it, KRS-One did it, then it stands on all.
So this is about the source for you, or the artist, more than the imagery. Is that what I'm hearing?
Both.
Okay. Because if it was Lupe Fiasco, you'd be like, okay.
If it was Chuck or KRS-One, somebody, then I'm like, I know where your head is at. With DaBaby, I'm like, you haven't been in this conversation. That doesn't mean you can't join it.
Right.
But
it felt trendy. It felt like he was doing it for attention.
Yeah. Are you doing it for attention, or are you truly moved and transformed by the moment and going with it? I'm not sure. I would like to hear more from him to know where.
And even if you are, and listen, I'm just kind of gaslighting you right now. I didn't see it, but even if you are moved by the moment, Jason, does that have to be the way in which you express it?
Exactly. So I'm gonna go old school, right? I'm gonna go old school. I remember as a kid seeing, I have military people in my family, right? So my brother was in the Air Force for a while. My father was retired Air Force colonel. My mom was in the FBI. I'm the only person who doesn't work for the man, and so to speak.
Yeah, you do. We all do.
But I remember as a kid, like seeing all those rappers and R&B stars who would I remember in the Belle Biv DeVoe Dope video, and they would always end with peace in the Middle East, peace in the Middle East. And I knew people who were being sent to the Gulf, right? Because we were a military family. We had, family members and people like that who were to the Gulf. And I remember even as a child thinking why are they saying peace? What the hell does peace in the Middle East mean? You don't know jack about what's happening over there right now. You're not supporting soldiers or whatever. I say this because there's always been a way in which musicians and entertainers have come in at the last minute and done some sort of clumsy thing, sloganeering or imagery about something that's going on. And I don't tend to get offended by it, because to me, it's all right, well, look, you weren't paying attention to it before. And if all you were caring about before was, parties and bullshit, and now you actually care about something, I'll take it. Right. I'll take it. I don't think it's exploitative, but I also don't think that if you ask DaBaby specific questions about, qualified immunity, I don't think he can answer that either.
No,
I think it's both, Toure. I think it could be a combination of both, and they're both okay to some extent. If it's just hey, this is what everybody's talking about right now, so let me add to the, actively be more of a provocateur by putting this image, like you said, we don't need to be reminded of it, but let me do it anyway, because that's the moment that we're in.
Right.
But it could also be, hey, whether I'm speaking as DaBaby right now, if I could, whether or not I've been on the front lines of this conversation, whether this is what my art has been about to this point, regardless, if I get pulled over, if I get stopped, or if I'm in the wrong neighborhood, no matter how much fame or money I have, I'm a victim too. All I'll say is this, man, again, having not watched the awards, all I'll say is this. The moment when George Floyd was murdered, I just kept thinking to myself that the image of Derek Chauvin, did I pronounce his name Chauvin?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
That was it. I've never seen a more picture perfect representation of America than that image. That if I could pick one picture, if there's here's the American flag, like it or not, that's a symbol for our country, right? The bald eagle is our mascot. If there's a picture that encapsulates American history perfectly, it was Derek Chauvin with his knee on the neck of George Floyd.
And his face all calm.
The position, the face, the position, hands in the pocket, the indifference, the badge, the uniform, the fact that the law and the state authorize sanctions and encourages violence against Black bodies, the helplessness of a Black man face down on the ground with his hands behind his back with 3 other officers helping in this murder. All of that was such a manifestation and crystallization of American history to me. And so if somebody wants to take that and use it, because frankly speaking, while we haven't been maybe physically murdered by an officer with his knee on our necks, the system, as many have pointed out, the system has had its knee on our collective necks since we got here. So so in that regard, I'm okay with it.
I mean, does it advance the conversation in any way? Like we have that image.
I mean, we're having it, but I don't know if we're advancing it.
But that image is in our short-term memory all the time right now. When you give it to us again in this stylized way, are you not risking re-traumatizing us? Like, like even if he was rhyming as he's kneeling on Chauvin's neck, right? Like that seems to me to be like what 80s hip hop would have done, right? Like now I'm leaning on your neck and I'm giving us that catharsis of seeing that. But like seeing him get killed, and I don't need him to be able to quote, Statute 50A and talk about qualified immunity. Like you can come into this at any level. And I understand many of us are traumatized and radicalized by the situation. And so you maybe never talked about this before, but now you're like, oh, I'm all about BLM, let's go. But if you don't advance the conversation in some way, you put out this image that is kind of traumatizing. I'm like, why do you need to tell us?
It's almost like how it's
Floyd. I know we could all be. I already knew that.
Or it's no different. It's no different than, I guess, and I'm sorry if I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, but I'm kind of trying to see it for what it is. It's no different than sharing it on social media. It's very gratuitous at this point to share it on social media. Like we've seen it. We know what it looks like. Or the news stations at one point stopped playing the image, or they would blur out George Floyd's face. Or they would say, hey, these images are disturbing. So, no, I don't know that it advances the conversation. I also don't know that it has to, though, Toure, again, to talk out the other side of my mouth. Does it have to? I mean, should it? And again, Jason called it at the beginning, bro. If it wasn't the baby, and the baby has, like, from his name to his bars, there is nothing about the baby that says conscious. Nothing that says conscious.
Exactly.
But if it was one of the people you had mentioned that did it, it would fall under art, whereas this just falls under.
And I'll also add, so many people we can think about who, like, if it was Chance, I'm like, okay, I know where your head is at.
Chance, Lupe, Donald Glover,
Yes, Donald Glover. I'm like,
Donald Glover did This Is America, and how much more does that video? I mean, that video was already poignant when it was done. Now it's like, run that back, Donald.
But I also think, Toure, you mentioned this interesting point, like this is advance the conversation. Like that's always been something that has caused my nose to wrinkle, right? Because our definition, it's kind of like when you have people do acts, works of art, and they're like, it starts the conversation. I don't give a rat's ass about starting a conversation, raises awareness. How do you quantify raising awareness? Like we're not PR experts here, right? So when you get into raising awareness, starting the conversation, or advancing the conversation, you get into this very, very squishy area of, well, what does any of that mean? And then it's easier to say that it's not starting a thing. Has it advanced the conversation? Well, advanced it for who and for where? Are there DaBaby fans that prior to him doing this song were like, I had no idea about George Floyd, but now no, that wasn't true. Just like, if to me, advancing the conversation is getting people who may have already been aware of a situation to either think about it differently or to discuss the issue beyond their initial shock or interest. So,
Jason,
like,
you know what you're talking about?
Hmm?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish your sentence.
So Meek Mill would be somebody who I think has advanced the conversation. Like lots of Black people have talked about, criminal justice and illegal imprisonment and everything else like that. Now he started to talk about prison reform. So that's advancing the conversation, but it took him a long time to get there. So,
well, let's go back to what you said a second ago, for who, for what, to quote Ricky Waters, for who, for what. The BET Awards are for us, number one. Number two, you hit it out the park and hit it on the head at the same time. The conversation, we've had the conversation. We don't need the conversation.
Right.
We don't have to advance that conversation. The conversation has gone as far as it can, will, and needs to go for Black people. The conversation is for white people at this point. And what's different about this moment is that they actually seem to be doing slightly more listening than historically they have.
True.
Most of the time they want to talk or talk down or white-splain the shit to us. Now
Right.
they seem to actually be listening and engaging and interested in the conversation in the way they weren't before. So whether the baby having an officer or a fake officer on his neck at the BET Awards advances the conversation for them, that's for them to decide. For us, we ain't got no work to do. We done talking.
That context is part of it for me. Like him doing it at the BET, I'm like, we've been thinking about this. If he did that at the Grammys, right, then I'm like, okay, now you're smushing it in their face again. Like, don't forget. And I'm like, okay, I'm with you. I understand. But at BET, I'm like,
but wasn't BET live streamed on CBS?
Break away from these.
It was.
Yeah. But the BET Awards were running on CBS this year, so that's essentially the same thing. Like, I didn't watch, but like they were running on CBS. So and CBS is the old people network. I mean, like that is CBS's target market for most of their programs.
I don't think that BET becomes the Grammys just because it's on CBS. I imagine a lot of white people are like, oh, it's the BET, click, right? Like, I always got into the BET of like, oh, Black Twitter's talking about it. So let me like dig into this, see what see what's going on. Like, how many white people are like, oh, Black Twitter's talking about it. So let me dig in and see what's going on.
Yeah. I mean, quarantine got us watching a lot of strange stuff, man. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if there were a significant chunk of people who are like, why the heck not? What else am I going to watch on a Sunday night?
What Michael said about the image of Chauvin being like the perfect Americana image is so right on and real as a serious fucking heart attack. And the only thing I would add to that is standing right behind him in that perfect American image is Mark McCloskey and Patricia McCloskey with their freaking guns and shit. Like, yeah, we're here too. We're like, those two maniacs are so America of like, we saw some peaceful protesters marching through our gated community and we immediately, within 10 seconds, grabbed our guns. Like, wow.
So I'm gonna just ask this up front. Do y'all watch Ozark?
I watched the first season.
The answer is yes, and I'm behind. I'm behind. Yeah,
I'm not up on the second season.
That show goes so hard. My wife is she about to ruin our marriage because we got a rule. You cannot go ahead on a show when you're watching it as a couple. My wife is going ahead. I think she almost finished.
See, now wait a minute. That rule.
Sorry, I don't mean to derail this.
No, but that's the real thing. I had that with an ex about watching you.
If the show is too hot and you sliding, I'm like, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna watch it back with you.
No, man.
Not allowed to do
we're supposed to experience this together.
Right. It's supposed to be.
You are applying Twitter rules to our marriage. Yeah. Twitter is you have a certain statute of limitations before the spoiler alerts have expired.
But if
our marriage, man, you got to find something else to do.
But if the show is hot and you're not stepping up to the plate in terms of finding time to watch it,
you're applying logic to marriage, man. I don't understand.
Like, oh, I can't watch.
And by the way, I'm only going. This was good for the goose, is good for the gander. I'm only going off of what she's done to me when it came to watching Greenleaf. When I watched Greenleaf, she got pissed at me. So I thought that the rule was we were waiting for each other. You can't be more than like one or two episodes. Like I said, I had this with an ex and we were watching you. Ozark, which is look, I'm done with Ozark. Like I'm already done. I'm waiting for this next whatever season. I'm gonna just say that I saw those two. I saw the McCloskeys, and I just freaking thought of the Snells. Like it's crazy. Like, and I used to live. Look, I used to live near St. Louis. I used to live in the suburbs of St. Louis on the Virginia side. And like these two white folks, and I don't know about you, the woman looked like she was drunk. Like the woman, the way she was holding that gun and kind of whatever, I didn't even think she was sober. But these two standing out, waving guns at people in broad daylight who are walking past their home on the sidewalk. And again, it would not shock me in a pre-smartphone era for them to have shot at the protesters or shot in the sky. The only reason I think they didn't is because they knew they were on camera.
I mean, the fear of blackness is so much of what racism is all wrapped up in. And
100%.
That you responded to immediately seeing some people with fear. These are people who are walking on the sidewalk. They were not coming for your house. His lies on media about they were coming into the house, dude, they didn't attack your house and they didn't attack any other house on the block. And when they got to the mayor's house, they didn't attack her house either. They just
even though she had attacked them, even though Lydia Cruzen attacked them.
This whole system is built on those two words, Toure. They're coming. Right. They're coming. Arm yourselves. Protect yourselves. Hide your wife. Hide your kids.
Control them.
Control them. Yeah, it's funny, man. Like, I became a gun owner probably, what's this, 2020? Probably about 2 years ago.
Really? What do you have?
You can't say that.
Why not?
That's how the burglars find out. You ain't supposed to tell them what you packing.
He already.
It's locked. It's locked away. It's locked away. I got.
How many? Really?
Nice.
Do you go to the range and shoot him?
I haven't been in a while.
So you feel.
Wait, now you got me paranoid, Jason. Is this a rule? Am I not supposed to say something?
Yeah,
you really. I don't think you're not supposed to say it.
You don't tell. You tell people that you have them. But you don't tell people how many guns that you have in the house or what type.
What difference does it make?
One, because you never know, like for real, just for safety purposes.
Okay, Ryan, can you cut this part out?
No, leave this in.
Cut this out.
This is what my gun only friends say to me.
Son, don't
cut this out, man.
No, don't listen
to this out. Ryan.
You got no gun.
Ryan. You have some fun editing this. Just beat this whole thing. Put
the little
funny as hell because we'll have the whole music in the middle. Yeah, put the whole music in the middle.
No, this is dope.
No, but let me tell you the story. It's okay. I'm gonna just pick up. I'm gonna pick up the TV terms, Toure.
Right.
Look, I'm gonna pick up where we left. So I became a gun owner 2 years ago, and we left the house the other day. One of the few times we leave the house. We really don't leave nowadays. But when we did, I made sure every now and then I'll slip up and I don't carry everywhere. But I had it, and my wife, and we were going to the bank, and my wife was like, I took it off and put it in the glove compartment. Usually I have it on my hip. And I took it off and put it in the glove compartment, and my wife was like, yeah, you probably shouldn't go in the bank. I'm like, you know what, man, this whole thing about guns, I'm like, the most armed people in America justifiably should be Black people. White people hold on to the Second Amendment like it's their firstborn child. Like, we should be the most armed people in America because it is the most dangerous for us out here.
No, but wait, now you are clearly a thoughtful gun owner. You're talking about, I'm in the house and they're in the safe, right?
Don't send no group text talking about leave that in.
Yeah.
No. You think you slick?
Looking out for Mike's safety, for real. I'm looking out for Michael's safety.
Here's the thing. What do you think about the research that shows that having a gun in the home makes it more dangerous for everybody in the home?
I think if you're an irresponsible gun owner, it's more dangerous. Like if you have an unloaded gun under your pillow, if you have a loaded gun under your pillow, under your bed, in a drawer that's easily accessible to children of a certain age, then yeah, you know what I mean? And then you are going to have some kind of accidental shoot. Or if you are irresponsible when it comes to cleaning your gun and you don't properly discharge your gun and unload the gun, and now, it's still hot, you still got a round in the chamber, and it accidentally goes off because you were distracted or you weren't focused and paying attention to detail, then yeah, you're going to have those accidents. If you're properly trained, as I believe I have been, if you're properly trained on how to handle a gun, how to clean a gun, how to lock away a gun, you shouldn't have those problems. Mine are all in safes, they're loaded in safes. The other thing about having an unloaded gun around the house, that defeats the purpose. Since we're on the subject of it, you have an unloaded gun and somebody breaks in your house, they ain't giving you time to find the ammunition and load the shit. So it needs to be loaded, but locked away safely. So yeah, if you're a responsible gun owner, gun carrier, firearm carrier, and in terms of your home and where you keep it in your home and that sort of thing, you shouldn't have those problems.
Do they have castle doctrine in Connecticut?
I have no idea what that means. I'm sorry.
Castle doctrine means if somebody comes into your home or onto your property, you have the right to shoot them. So in some states, you have a duty to.
Oh, I have heard that. In
some states, you can shoot anybody who comes onto your ship.
I believe if they're in your home, you can shoot. I believe is the case in Connecticut. Yes. But I put it to you this way. Here's why I say I believe. You might be saying, well, you should know that. No, guess what? If they come to my house, I'm fucking shooting. Whether they're castle doctrine or not, I'm fucking shooting. If you have my front door, I'm firing off.
But you've never had a close call.
I have not had a close call, no.
So I want to add to this. So I grew up with a gun in the house.
How did we get on this subject, by the way? Oh, we were talking about
it up.
Yes, you brought it up.
Did I? Oh, okay.
What I was supposed to say. Yeah. So I grew up with a gun in the house. My dad always had a gun, and it wasn't because he was in the military. We had a gun in the house. My parents are from Newark, right? And my dad showed me and my brother where the gun was. I'm assuming that it was loaded. There were.
What was it?
Huh?
What was it?
It was just like a regular, and this is from years ago. It was just one of regular, 6-shooter or whatever.
6-shooter joints, yeah.
Yeah, regular handgun. And I actually saw my father pull it out to use once, right? Which is a testament to in my entire life, 18 years living in my home, there was only one time I saw my dad with the gun to use it. But again, it's valuable. What it was, so we lived across the street. Ironically, this is when we were living in the Illinois suburb of St. Louis. We had these sort of really trashy, crappy next door neighbors who had these Dobermans that they didn't feed, that they didn't care for. They used to bark at us when we came home from school. And one day my mom was out jogging and the Dobermans broke their chains, broke the spikes out of the wall, jumped over the fence and chased my mom.
Oof.
So my mom is terrified because these are some vicious dogs that they don't feed. And they had her pinned up against our front door. So she's screaming, the dogs are growling, and my dad came running downstairs with the gun and on some real, Malcolm X at the window thing. He's yelling at my mom. My mom is screaming and crying. He's like, I'm gonna open the door, fall in, and I'm gonna shoot the dogs. Right. So my brother and I are at the bottom of the stairs. We're scared. My mom's scared, screaming. Right before my dad opens the door, the neighbor comes running out. Cletus, the slack-jawed yokel. He's like, I'm sorry. And he grabs both of the dogs. My mom gets inside. My dad, still with the gun in his hand, is screaming at the neighbor. And he's like, I will kill you and your dogs if I ever see you again. They came after my wife, blah, 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 blah. Mom gets in safe, et cetera, et cetera. So I relayed that story because, like Michael said, if you're a responsible gun owner, right? If that neighbor doesn't come, my dad was going to be the only thing between my mom and getting, seriously injured by 2 Dobermans, right? She average woman height. They could have done anything to her. So it's important to have. We never had anybody break in or anything else like that, but it's important to have.
That's all right.
I grew up with a gun in the home. I believe in not having a gun in my home, but my father had a gun. It was I remember it had a silver pearl handle. You could have put it in your hand and then hit it with your hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my father was really tough when he was a teenager. He grew up in Brooklyn, in Harlem. He was carrying a gun when he was 16, 17 in the 50s. So it was a little unusual that at that era. So I know he was a little tough gang guy. So when he was grown, he was I know how to handle myself. He would go to the range, whatever. And there was one time when we were living in Boston and I was 6, and we went to visit my uncle who lived up the street from where I live now in Brooklyn. And there was it was not projects, but it definitely lower income housing. They go up in the elevator, him, my mom, my sister, it's 5, me, my uncle, his wife, their little baby, who's holding baby. They're supposed to go up to say the 11th floor. On the 3rd floor, some guy gets on, and immediately my dad's like, "Oh, this guy looks like bad news." The door closes. The guy pulls out a knife, right, and he's like, "Run!" He said something to the effect of "Run your shit." And it's a little project-y type elevator. It's really close. You could reach out and touch anybody in the elevator. Right. And my dad pulls out his gun, which he's not licensed to carry in New York, but he pulls his shit out I'm a lieutenant, which he was not. But he's that's going to scare the guy even more. Get out. And they push the button, push the guy off, went upstairs, solved the problem, which we always looked at him as the big hero of saving us in the moment of the urban jungle or whatever. So, I mean, I know he pulled it out once or twice when he was going to work. He worked in Mattapan Square. Occasionally things were in Boston, a little hairy, So, I mean, I had an example of a responsible gun owner who used it to help save himself and his family. So I'm with that. But personally, I believe in
So I did not. I had my attitude toward guns shifted over the last couple of years. Really, like if you'd asked me 3-4 years ago about guns, I'd have probably leaned more toward anti-gun because I actually had a fear of guns. Like I got this notion that like a gun, like if you dropped it on the ground, it might go off. Like I had never even been around or handled a loaded gun before. I never fired a loaded gun, and so like. Again, I grew up in New Orleans, which is the murder capital of the world the country when I was growing up in the late 80s and 90s. But for the grace of God, like I was protected. I was lower middle class in New Orleans, but protected from all of that stuff. So honestly, I just did not have the stereotypical Black kid from New Orleans upbringing where I grew up. I wasn't ducking bullets. So It's like gunfire, gunshots, handling a gun was foreign to me, and I never handled one. So I had an inherent fear of guns. But now that I've been trained on it and taken tactical training and gone to the range a few times, and like I know how to handle it, I have a different attitude toward it. And it's just like, I feel like everybody who is interested in legally owning a gun should have to not only go to a range or take a course, but go through tactical firearm training. Because it's one thing to shoot with no stress straight on at a range, but shooting from a car, shooting in the dark, shooting with your offhand, shooting while wounded, shooting moving targets, shooting while you're moving, all of those different things need to be involved in your training before you can get a gun, in my opinion.
I mean, I feel like there's too many guns in America, and that's one of the big problems with America. And for me and maybe in 5 years, I'll be like, I switched up Michael. Maybe I can't know the future, but
I kind of got peer pressured into it.
By who?
but them rough streets of Connecticut.
My Krav Maga trainer. My Krav Maga trainer was just like, he really suggested that I get trained on how to carry and handle a firearm. And I was like, you know what? Okay, I'll do it. And once I did it, and once I went to, a couple of these camps that he puts on that teaches tactical training, I just got more and more comfortable with it. I'm not a gun collector or a gun lover or a gun enthusiast, but I no longer have the anti-gun or fear of guns that I once had. I am anti-irresponsible gun ownership.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And here's the thing, like Toure, and Michael's really key when he's like, it's about responsibility. The stories that we always hear, the most dangerous ones, right, are like the Adam Lanzas, right? These parents who have kids who are clearly disturbed, the Dylan Roof and the Klebold's or whatever. You've got some buck wild, disturbed, problematic kids. You don't lock up your guns. You don't keep them in a safe space, right? I mean, whether it's that or alcohol or whatever it is, and then these people go off and commit horrible crimes. Like, I agree with you, Toure, from the standpoint of we have too many guns in this country, but really my bigger issue is we have too many guns that people can access without having to do the kinds of things that Michael did. I've always looked, I'm like, hey, people can be able to have whatever guns they want, but I think that getting a gun should be no different than getting a driver's license. You got to go in, you got to take classes, you got to take a test, and if, driver's licenses last 10 years, well, I think that your gun license should be like a 2-year thing. Every 2 years, you got to come back in, prove that you're trained, prove that you ain't got no DUIs, no domestic violence charges, any of those things. I think you should lose your gun license. And if people had to go in and actually get the training that Michael is talking about every 2 years, right, I think you'd have a lot more responsible gun ownership, because quite frankly, how many times do we ever hear about, other than these situations, you talk about the elevator or my dad or whatever, the right-wing fear, which is like, I got to have this gun in case there's a mass shooting. Well, we have mass shootings in Texas and we have mass shootings in Ohio, and these are open carry states, and no one seems to be retaliating and saving anybody.
No, you never hear of the civilian who saved Gabby Giffords or the theater in New York. But the last thing I want when the nut job goes crazy in the movie theater is somebody else who wants to be a hero who's firing back. Now you want 3-4 people firing off in the mall, in the movie theater, killing all sorts of people. You were trying to be a guardian angel. You were trying to be a guardian angel, but you friggin' kill it. Cops who are trained make mistakes and shoot the wrong person all the time.
Yeah, no, like
you to the heat.
In the training for those types of scenarios, we're taught not to do what you're talking about. Right. Not to try to be the hero, not to try to save the day. Like it is get to safety, get away, take cover, not concealment. And there's a difference. Take cover, get away. But if you have to, for the safety of you and your family, then you draw and then you fire. But we are not there, people like me, like a civilian with a gun, we are not there to be the hero and try to be on the news and be like, yeah, I just, somebody had to do it. Like, that's not my job. You know what I mean? It's get to safety, call the cops.
What was the guy, the Waffle House, the brother at Waffle House, something Stevens, the guy who stopped the naked shooter? You guys remember that from like a year or two ago?
I don't remember.
It's like this naked white guy comes in. Like, how does anyone forget the story of the naked white guy? Naked white guy comes in.
Was it in Florida?
Huh?
Was it in Florida?
Naked white guy in Florida. He came into this Waffle House in Tennessee and like started to shoot. And this brother came out of the bathroom, fought him, right? Grabbed the gun. You remember he burned his hand and he was like a national hero the next day. He was like, I'm just trying to get home to see my daughter. Oh man, I can't remember his name, but his name was like Steven something. This happened in like 2017 or 2015 or whatever. But like the stories that we usually hear, it's some unarmed person fighting the gunman. It's the school teacher in Atlanta who talked the kid down who had a gun in his hands. Well, there are almost no stories out there of the McCloskeys or anybody else pulling a gun and stopping a crime that's already being committed. Do we have grainy video of store owners pulling out rifles and scaring off a would-be robber? Yeah. Occasionally.
Look, if that ever happened, the NRA would make that person a national celebrity.
Oh, I'm gonna look up this guy in Tennessee. The NRA. Now, I'm this may be a rhetorical question. I've been to an NRA convention. Okay.
Have you really?
Yeah. I went to the NRA convention in 2017 when it was in Atlanta. Fascinating experience. I mean,
out of research, or
I was writing a story. I was working for the Root at the time, and so I went to just sort of see what it was like. It's really elaborate. It's fascinating. First off, they're selling you go to an NRA convention and you literally think that you're preparing for the purge. They sell cannons, they're selling RPGs, and then whatever they can't sell you there, if you're willing to talk to them, they'll tell you where you can get what they can't sell on the floor in the convention center behind CNN, right? They'll sell you anything. And, and all of it is these sort of constant videos, it's this very RoboCop. You'll walk by these videos, it's like, it's always some white woman. He was entering my home. My wife was at work. My children were blah, blah, blah. And that's why I had this, right? All prepped, all gunned out. I say this because they don't even choose their heroes properly. Because to go back to how we started this whole conversation with the baby, because you would think that Philando Castile would have been the NRA's poster boy.
Totally. So, but he's
this guy was a legal gun owner and got shot.
But he's black. Their whole shit is
ain't about us.
Against black
they don't care about us.
You are supposed to be scared of Philando Castile, a black man with a gun. That's their
always
shit.
With or without a gun, we're a threat. With or without a gun,
but especially
we're
gun.
in danger.
That's why you have to buy a gun, because Philando has a gun. So you got to make sure you're on an even playing field, or you're not a man, right? Yeah. I think that's part of what disgusts me so much, that it's not the responsible, like the way you portray it, Michael, is very responsible and not hero shit. And their shit is like, you're not a man if you don't.
No, I'm not. I don't feel tougher when I have it on. You know what I mean? I'm not looking to get into no shit. I'm not looking to use it. Like, you got to understand the power of it. But we got to change the subject, man, because I'm still freaked out, because I didn't realize talking about your guns is like voting. You know what I mean? You can't talk about who you voted for.
Don't worry about
it. Dave. Trying to tell you about fucking my wife. You about this personal shit. It's about this personal shit, Dave. Hey. So I was
trying to tell you. I'm talking about
it. All right, let me ask you, since we're on a right wing adjacent situation,
And I just want to say this. I looked up the dude. It was James Shaw at a Waffle House in 2018. And there were 4 victims, and he saved them by jumping on the shooter. So
Kanye about to drop a new album. You still with them?
I've been with Kanye since College Dropout.
Yeah, I don't care.
You missed the whole ride, son.
No, I mean, my Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy was his best album.
That was dope.
And it was an incredible album.
That was dope.
No, I don't fuck with Kanye, man. I don't fuck with, like, Kanye's music ain't even enough for me to fuck with Kanye right now. Like, exactly. Maybe one thing would be like, you know what? I don't fuck with dude's politics or his whole shit, but he puts out good music. He don't even put out good music to me at this point. So
I mean, he's had, I think it's 2 whack albums in a row.
Yeah.
But he's had so many good albums that I can't.
Oh, his catalog is incredible. I mean, I'll forgive him. I'll forgive him for the recent shit. Yeah.
I mean, this is probably one of the best first, I think, 6 albums to start a career ever, right? Yeah. Including like the level of like Prince and Sade and like Stevie Wonder. Like, not that his albums are as good as all of those, but like,
no, I hear what you're saying.
First like 6 albums of your career, like incredible. I can't not give him a listen. I can't shove him aside. I'm like, no.
God bless you.
I can't.
God bless you. Look, let me tell you something.
So many points on the board musically. New Kanye album, I gotta check it. New Kanye video, I'm like, you're so creative and you're so thoughtful when you're in your art. I hate your politics.
Yo, he's so full of shit right now, man. I can't.
But I gotta give you a look.
First off, I couldn't tell you which album a Kanye song came from in the last 5 or 6 years. Because to me, like, look, it's not that I can't separate art from artists or politics from artists. I do it all the time, right? But at the same time, I'm like, he just hasn't been that interesting to me. And like, all falls down with, Kelly and Neo, whatever it is. Once again, I just didn't care. I didn't care. I don't care about him. I don't care about Joy Vila's album. I don't care about any of these sort of pro-Trump, right-wing sort of crazy people one way or another. And it's interesting because I don't know who his audience is anymore because I couldn't define. I mean, like you guys are talking about his Dark Twisted Fantasy. You could play me 5 songs off that album. I may or may not know them.
You would know that. You would know that album. No, you would know that album. You would know that album. You would absolutely know that.
Maybe he was in the books. He wasn't listening. I don't know.
No, because I mean that's Power. All right, so that's Power is on that album. That's All of the Lights is on that album.
Okay.
That's Devil in a New Dress is on that one.
Yep. All the Lights. Monster.
That's Blame Game.
I don't know if I know that
Monster.
One.
Yeah, that's
Blame Game was the one with Chris Rock, right?
Yeah. Runaway, like that's
Runaway. You definitely heard.
Yeah, you heard those.
That was the one with Stacey Dash, right? Is that the video he did with Stacey Dash? Was that Runaway?
Was it? No, I don't think so.
Runaway.
No, that was All Falls Down.
Was she in All Falls Down? I try to forget. Yeah. I try to forget about her too. You know what? I did give Life of Pablo a few spins. I liked Life. There was some tracks on Life of Pablo.
A bunch of dope songs.
Yeah, so I'm saying that's 2016. I didn't do Jesus is King.
Jesus is King's horrible.
I love Jesus, but I didn't do that. And I skipped Ye too. Jesus is King and Ye, I didn't do
those
either one of those.
Horrible. Cudi had a better album, which was a Cudi and Kanye album, but Cudi's album was solid. Kanye's album was trash. The worst album that he'd made. And then his gospel album, I was like, I hope to never hear this again. But I'm gonna give it a, I do appreciate the visual sense, right? Like nobody was talking about Takashi Murakami in pop music before he was. Now he's got my man Arthur Jaffa, who's a legendary photographer, going back, making his new video. It looks crazy and amazing and wild. So, I mean, just the visual sense is always like, yo, Kanye's on some next thoughtful shit. And where his sound is, I'm not mad at him. Travis Scott's having a big impact on him. So, I mean, I gotta give him a chance. I think I will always give him a chance, even as my skin crawls to see him like in the Oval Office and wearing the red hat, which is the fucking Klan hood.
Yeah, I can't.
And I threw out my pillow. I got my pillow before Trump was president. Okay, I was liking it. When I found out that he was down with Trump, I fucking threw that pillow out. I can't do that with Kanye. I keep wanting to, and I just don't.
If we list the companies, like I said, problematic ownership and leadership, there is a Chick-fil-A on Morgan State's campus, right? And I used to love Chick-fil-A nuggets. I haven't had Chick-fil-A since their leadership came out with this anti-LGBT stuff. My Pillow, Papa John's. Again, I'm a college professor. Papa John's is the easiest, most accessible pizza.
Papa John's been trash though. Papa John's was always trash. Like that shit tastes like cardboard, dog.
But it's good college pizza. It's good college pizza because it's super easy for your class.
Conscious with your dollars, you can't.
Ramen noodles is better.
Look, I was a New York Jet fan. Okay,
that's the end of this. I don't even know where that comes from.
No, because when I came to New York, they had Kerry Collins. The Giants had Kerry Collins, and he just come off of saying the N-word in.
Right. So your alternative was the shitty ass Jets.
All right, I'm gonna ride with the Jets, and they had a couple good years. They had a black quarterback. I'm like, all right, I'm fucking with the Jets. And when I found out that Woody Johnson was rolling with Mitt Romney, I was like, fine, we can agree to disagree. When I'm like, yo, you're super Trumpy to where he became an ambassador, I'm like, that's it. I'm done. I have no.
Listen, our whole next episode or one of these episodes. Look, man, you want to talk about the cognitive dissonance we practice in sports? Bruh, oh my God! That's hard because sports is like it's like you can find alternative places to patronize based on their politics. Like sports, a lot of times you don't have a choice in the matter.
Nope.
And whether it's ownership or the players, there's always something that makes you be like, fuck, I can't believe I fucking this team.
Because I read Selena Roberts' book about A-Rod, and I'm like, oh, and I was like, steroids is a terrible thing, in professional sports. And he did it in high school. He did it with the
Rangers,
the Mariners.
The Mariners, yeah.
Rangers. Yeah. He was crazy with the Rangers. Fuck A-Rod. Oh, no, he's a Yankee.
Yeah, he's our steroid guy. Yeah, no, absolutely. That is life in sports.
And I was hating on him when he wasn't delivering more than that he was a steroid guy, right?
Yeah.
When he started,
for sure.
Then when he started delivering, it was like, fine, we like him too.
Yeah, I have. You do it in football, you do it in basketball, you do it in baseball, especially if you're one of those people who has like a regional connection to your team. I moved around a lot, but I have friends from Cleveland who had to deal with Dan Gilbert being like ground zero for the housing crisis for Black people, right? Yeah. I have friends who grew up in the DC metro area who always had a problem with the name of the professional football team there. And now, or Atlanta.
That's the biggest one.
How is that not changing in all this moment? How is that not fucking budget?
Because there's money involved. And if you're, here's the thing, and if you're committed to a team, you always have this pick and choose. I was an Eagles fan until they got rid of McNabb. Now I'm a Seahawks fan. There are some Seahawks that have said some great things during this era. There's some Seahawks that have said some nonsense during this era. I read Michael Bennett's book. I met him at a book thing in DC. Richard Sherman says some great stuff. Sometimes there's some crazy stuff.
Right.
You find a way to stomach it.
Look, and that's just, I don't know. We're just talking about
anything.
Players come and go. It is the owner's team. I can't fuck with the Knicks because I cannot fuck with Dolan.
Yeah.
I can't fuck with the Jets because I cannot fuck with Woody Johnson. That shit.
We could but let's get even bigger. We're talking about like the owners and some of their off the field, like who they are as people, some of their off the field affiliations and who they donate to, this, that, and the other. Like, we just talk overall systems. I mean, the NFL, there were some people who really lived the I'm with Cap. And there were other people who sat there every fucking Sunday, set their fantasy football lineups, and continued to patronize the NFL despite what they did to Colin Kaepernick. Hell, even Colin Kaepernick mysteriously was trying to get back into the NFL. That's a whole nother conversation. College sports in general, the system of exploitation in college sports. We still fuck with the tournament. We still fuck with college football. We still, in college sports is the most racist institution we have in sports.
Every single one of these coaches who get busted. I wrote a piece, and again, I know Michael knows about this in more detail. I wrote a piece back in 2009, I think, when I worked for the Chicago Defender and Pittsburgh Courier about what the NFL did to Reggie Fowler. And that's that was my turning point then. Like, when people were talking about Kaepernick, I was like, go look up the story of Reggie Fowler. go look at just how incredibly racist and cliquish this whole system is. Notice how owning a damn franchise is in modern day. And Toure, in case you don't know this, Reggie Fowler was going to be the first black man to own an NFL team. He had the money. He had the resources.
He was close. The Vikings, right? Wasn't it the Vikings? I think it was the Vikings,
he was going to buy the Vikings from Red McComb.
Yeah.
And they totally screwed him over because apparently in order to buy an NFL team, there has to be a unanimous vote by 31 other, oftentimes racist owners. And they literally went to Fowler and they were like, well, you sold it to Red McComb. Red McCombs works with you, but we need to check out your finances. He's like, I'm not about to give my finances to all you strangers. Some of you guys are my business competitors. So they literally wouldn't let that black man buy the team and let one of the supporting partners that he brought in buy the team instead of him.